Hi everyone, my name is Jessie. I'm the MCVP IGV Enabler Experience, and welcome to today's education, which is regular enabler feedback and updates, having the consistent conversations that matter. What we're covering today are why feedback and updates, why frequency and consistency of these updates and feedback matter, how to implement this value delivery minimum for this summer, and finally, recording it properly for now and in the future. Firstly, the objective of this is I understand the importance of two-way feedback and updates to achieve our ultimate IGV goal. So it's useful to work our way backwards if we look at what the ultimate aim of IGV Enabler Experience is. It's about being able to deliver more leadership development experiences that can, together with organizations in Malaysia, build a united nation for peace and fulfillment of humankind's potential. So that doesn't happen out of nowhere. The way that we do that is by treating our enablers as customers to ensure they benefit from youth leadership development. So it doesn't matter what kind of enabler they are or how they play their role, how is the youth leadership that we're developing in our EPs who are carrying out the projects actually creating benefit for these enablers at the end of the day. So, as has been mentioned for previous sessions this month, the golden rule for this summer is that your checklist is your plan. To revisit that, this is what the checklist looks like, and here are some resources where you can really understand how the checklist should happen, particularly the SOP, which takes you through all of the steps in each of the stages of the customer flow, and also the timeline, the Prodio CRM, and the guide on how to use it. What we are focusing on today is project updates and feedback based on benefits of youth leadership development of EPs for the enabler. What this essentially boils down into is giving updates and asking for feedback from the enabler on this weekly basis to make sure that we're doing our job. How does this contribute to our big summer, you might ask? It's only through the constant feedback of our customers that we can improve the product we're providing them. Their experience matters, and without knowing what their experience is like, we can't achieve those overall ambitions of giving enablers the worthwhile experience so that they can continue to develop youth leadership with us. And also, by providing project updates to our customers, we build credibility, which is able to show us as professional, trust, and show that we are accountable, and finally, emotional connection with the enabler towards the project through our care about the impact. So the advice that we've gotten externally is that for organizations who support these projects, they really want to feel emotionally connected and see the real impact the project is creating. So it's not simply just giving a few words about what is going on. It's really showing our excitement and our dedication towards what is happening, letting them share in that excitement and allowing them to see what kind of job that we're carrying out so that they can have trust within us. Why frequency and consistency matters, where after this section, you will understand why feedback and updates need to be carried out often and consistently. Remember what CRM is from the session 2 weeks ago? What does customer relationship management mean in this context? If we look at the definition, we talk about things happening throughout the customer lifecycle. So we are often very good at taking care of enablers when we are trying to attract them. And then between attracting them, securing them, and for the project to start, this is where we often lose contact or lose our regular engagement. So the customer life cycle is from the first moment they work with ISEC to the last moment that they stop working with us. So we really need to make sure that these interactions happen, particularly in this time period. CRM happens throughout the customer flow. So like what I just mentioned, attraction and consideration often get a lot of attention, value delivery not really, and by the time we get to brand advocacy, we realize we didn't do a good enough job in value delivery for them to become brand advocates. Let's change that game and ensure that we do the proper value delivery as well. Improving business relationships with customers. So we talk about how we want to build the trust and credibility and the emotional connection by being accountable and professional and being able to show our care for the impact that we're creating. And ultimately, this will help us in customer retention so that these organizations continue to work with us. And that is what we're here for at the end of the day, for this summer peak especially, that 70% enabler retention rate and 50 overall enabler NPS is really what we strive for. Keep in mind that our IGV projects are only 6 weeks long. That's not a lot of time for us to be able to actually give these sorts of updates and receive the feedback if we don't do it often. Because if only in 6 weeks, when the project is actually happening, you only ask for their feedback maybe once in the middle and then once at the end, you don't know about all the opportunities you have to improve in the middle. And what's more is that actually we start working with enablers months before realization. This is something that you'll see if you check out SOP, because basically this kind of working relationship with enablers and value delivery, it starts after we actually secure them, and it starts well before EPs even come. Therefore, let's make sure we are constantly improving in this whole time period that we are working with them. That when we receive feedback, we know what we need to do to keep the things we're doing well and make the things that we're not doing so well even better. Finally, how do you implement this? So before I go into any strategy or detail, the first thing that I need to tell you is, if you want to make this happen, you need to care enough to make it happen. How much does your team really care about giving these updates and also getting the feedback from the enablers? How much do you care about their experience and also letting them know about how things are going overall? Only when you actually sit down and think about these things for yourself will you actually have the consistency to do what I'm describing. Because the consistency is just doing it every week. So if you really want to be able to do the best job that you can for the enablers, then you will create a regular time where you do this for them. What do you need to talk about for this big summer? Each weekly interaction should include feedback based on benefits of youth leadership development and project progress updates. I'll go a bit more in depth into what that means in a bit. So, what needs to be asked for feedback from your enablers? Key questions. How are you, or how's everything going? Don't underestimate a few words taken to care about the enabler, and also it can give you some very good insight into how they are as a customer right now that you can then take forward in how you interact with the enabler. What about working with ISEC are you most satisfied about right now? Before we actually go into the project and before the EP is developing their leadership and producing some tangible benefits for the enabler, we need to make sure that we understand from an overall perspective what are they satisfied with. Throughout the project, we can actually start to ask them, okay, so the enabler is working for you like this, or they're working for the project like this. Through developing their leadership, this is how they're creating the project impact. So what part about the EP developing their leadership is actually giving some kind of benefit towards you? How do you think ISEC can provide an even better service towards what we're doing? And finally, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your current experience? So all of this can be asked in quite a fast way, of course, unless they need to express. Sometimes we've been to meetings with our different enablers where they really need to just tell us how everything that they're talking about is going, and they really need a space to express. So if they need to express, make sure that you're going to be there to listen to them. How do you provide project updates to your enablers? 2 forms. Before EP realization, share about the status of your project timeline. How ready are the things that you're preparing for the exchange participants, and also how are your deliverables going for the enablers themselves? This shows how on track or how not on track you are, and if you're not on track, what are the action steps you can take to really get things going. Share about the achievement of certain measures, such as the number of outreach, of how many students are secured for the project workshops. Look into your own project framework to see what other things that you're measuring. Provide updates based on your project framework. And finally, send any visuals that can capture the emotional mood of the project and the enabler. Even if it's your members who are hard at work to prepare IPS, or if it's simply having a meeting, you want to showcase to them that things are happening. You want to give them something other than your words that they can interact and engage with. During the EP realization, again, keep sharing about the progress of the achievement of certain measures, and send any visuals that can capture the emotional mood of the project and the enabler based on the IGV brand advocacy guidelines, which are linked here in the IGV hub, and using a storytelling method. So you're still reporting about impact. It's just if you're doing Speak Up project, you might want to share a personal story about something that happened with a student in the past week. Really make them feel like, they're just a friend. You're sharing about your day. You're sharing about something that you're very excited about, so that they don't feel like, oh, this week it's 5 students who improved in their English level. This is part of this sharing. The concrete data is very important to tell the enabler so that they know things are actually happening. The way that you tell them can be more emotionally based. Give them something for them to engage more than one sense in the visuals, and then also have them know in this exciting kind of way. On a weekly basis, these interactions should only be about 5 to 10 minutes long, unless, like previously mentioned, the enabler, they need to express about something, there's something that really needs more discussion between you, the enabler, then of course you can adjust the timing. Why I mentioned 5 to 10 minutes here is because weekly updates are quite often, so you also don't want them to be unnecessarily long. Just get to the key points and make sure that you are covering all the things that you're meant to do for the enabler and the enabler is meant to do for you, and always connected in that kind of emotional way. So, how should I reach out to enablers this big summer? Reach out to enablers in ways that are convenient and useful for them. That is the recap of the way that our communication should go. How do you reach out? Number 1, on channels that are most effective and suitable for them to talk. Depending on how you and your enabler communicate, some even communicate through WhatsApp. That's totally fine. I do recommend mixing in some physical meetings in there. So in this example, the suggestion is you can have at the start, middle, and end of the project the physical meetup, and in between have phone calls or WhatsApp. Appreciate that the enablers are usually busy. So ensure that your conversations are value adding. They shouldn't feel like you are bothering them when you're having these conversations. So make sure that both your updates for what is happening with the project and the way that you not only receive the feedback, you also act upon the feedback, is making them feel like, okay, these weekly touch points is something that's really useful for working with ISEC. So I really want to engage with ISEC for these weekly conversations. So, finally is recording interactions properly now and for the future. What should your conversation output actually look like? So this is the way that you can record these updates. And one thing that hasn't been written here is the action step summary. So throughout, depending on what they're doing, for example, you can put down that 1, I want to visit next week with a token of appreciation to relieve their stress, and put a deadline for it. So for example, by Thursday. I want to talk internally with my IGV product team, so only one person is communicating with the enabler. And I want to continue giving consistent and clear email communication in the lead up to IPS. So this one, I might do it in my weekly team meeting on Monday, for example. And this one doesn't really have a set date. It's just I can communicate this with the team that this is something we're doing well. Cool. Then you have all the output that you possibly need to ensure that you can capture the conversation that you had with them. So your call to action when you are writing all of these things down is actually recorded all on Podio. So here in Podio, we have our ISEC in Malaysia Customer Relationship Management workspace. And in here, we go into interactions and negotiations. And then I will pick one organization to go in, for example, St. Nicholas Home that I and Panay work with. So, through understanding if they're tired or stressed or that they're understaffed, this is something that you can put into the customer profile map. And then for taking down output itself, keeping up to date the number of weekly feedback and update conducted, and finally, putting the output from this slide that we just mentioned into this part here, so that now and into the future, we can always know what really happened with the enabler and be able to work well with this organization to provide them custom experience. So do the right thing for their current experience as well as how ISEC can work with them into the future. So as a recap, today's content: why feedback and updates, why frequency and consistency matters, how to implement this value delivery minimum of conducting the weekly enabler feedback and update, and recording it properly for now and into the future. As a summary of the key messages is, I understand the importance of two-way feedback and updates to achieve our ultimate IGV goal. I understand why feedback and updates need to be carried out often and consistently. I know how to make these regular touch points happen, and I know how to keep clear record of the output. So, please do give your feedback for this education space, both in the content and the delivery, to make sure that we can consistently improve the way that we deliver education. Thank you for your time. Please direct any questions that you might have about the content to this email address that's selected here, and all the best in giving value delivery for your enablers in this summer peak.